Evelyn Carter sensed Daniel before she saw him. Some awareness sharpened by hurt made her pause as she stepped out of the building, the evening air brushing her face. When she looked up, he was standing across the street, uncertain, smaller than she remembered. For a moment, neither moved. The city continued around them, indifferent to the reckoning about to unfold. Daniel crossed the distance slowly, as if afraid she might disappear if he hurried. "Evelyn," he said, her name breaking slightly as it left his mouth. "I didn't come to force anything. I needed to see you." She studied him with a calm that surprised even herself. The anger she once imagined was gone, replaced by a quiet clarity. "You've seen me," she replied. "What is it you're hoping for now?" Daniel struggled to meet her eyes. "I want to apologize. Not to fix things, not to erase what I did, just to tell you that I understand what I destroyed." He paused, swallowing hard. "I searched everywhere because I couldn't accept that you left without a word. But I know now. You didn't owe me one." Evelyn listened without interruption. She noticed the absence of excuses, the way his words no longer tried to shift blame. That, more than anything, told her how much had changed. Still, understanding came too late. "I loved you," she said evenly. "Enough to ignore what felt wrong. Enough to trust the people closest to me without question. When that trust broke, it took something with it that can't be repaired." Daniel nodded, tears gathering but unhidden. "I know, and I'll live with that." He glanced at her hands, bare of rings, steady at her sides. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that losing you was the consequence I deserved." Behind him, a car passed, its headlights briefly illuminating his face. Evelyn felt the finality of the moment settle. She did not feel victorious, only free. "I hope you learn from this," she said. "Not for me, but for whoever you become after." Daniel stepped back, understanding the dismissal for what it was. He turned away without protest, carrying with him the weight of a future shaped by regret. Evelyn watched until he disappeared from view. She did not follow. She returned to her room, closed the door, and allowed herself a long breath. The confrontation had not reopened her wounds. It had sealed them. Closure, she realized, did not always arrive with reconciliation. Sometimes it came with boundaries firmly held. Lena Brooks faced her own reckoning alone. The pregnancy she once believed would secure affection only magnified her isolation. Daniel's distance was unmistakable. His focus turned inward. Friends withdrew, and silence filled the spaces where validation once lived. She thought of Evelyn often, understanding too late the cost of envy and betrayal. Some apologies, she learned, had no recipient. Days passed, and Evelyn settled into a life defined by intention rather than reaction. She returned to work, her focus sharpened. Ryan Hale remained a quiet constant, respectful and observant, offering conversation without intrusion. Evelyn appreciated the simplicity of it. Healing did not demand grand gestures. It required consistency. Margaret Carter sent a letter. It contained no defense of her son, only acknowledgement of Evelyn's strength and an apology offered without expectation. Evelyn read it carefully, then placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness, she decided, could exist without proximity. One evening, Evelyn stood by her window, watching the city lights pulse with possibility. The pain that once dominated her thoughts had softened into memory. She knew her story would always include loss, but it would no longer be defined by it. Love, she had learned, was not proven by endurance alone. It was proven by respect, honesty, and the courage to walk away when those were absent. Yes, she turned off the light and prepared for rest. Evelyn felt something unfamiliar yet welcome, a quiet confidence in the future. She did not know who she would become next, only that she would never again accept a love that required her to disappear. The search that had consumed Daniel was over, but Evelyn's journey, finally her own, was just beginning. Evelyn spent the next few days in a haze, replaying Lucas's words over and over in her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his pleading expression at the cafe, the vulnerability hidden behind his usual confidence. She felt a strange mixture of guilt and anticipation, as if the mere thought of him had awakened a part of herself she had kept carefully tucked away. Nathan remained oblivious, caught up in his own routines, which made the contrast between his steady reliability and Lucas's unpredictable intensity feel even sharper. By Thursday evening, Evelyn's rational mind warred with a magnetic pull she felt toward Lucas. She found herself texting him under the guise of casual conversation, asking about mundane things, a recommendation for a book, a comment about a movie, anything that would justify the fluttering excitement she felt when his replies came almost instantly. Lucas responded with warmth, patience, and subtle hints of longing that tightened her chest. It was clear that he was treading carefully, aware of the boundary they were dancing around, but unwilling to step back entirely. When Lucas finally suggested they meet again, Evelyn hesitated. "Just for coffee," he texted. "No expectations. I just want to see you." The words were innocent on the surface, yet the undertone carried all the tension of the previous encounter. Evelyn found herself nodding to herself, convinced that she could maintain control, that she could handle this without crossing a line. The evening was cool and damp when she arrived at the small art studio Lucas had rented for painting lessons. The space smelled faintly of turpentine and clay, and the walls were adorned with canvases in various stages of completion. Lucas stood by the large window, the city lights reflecting off his dark eyes, and smiled at her, that same disarming smile that always made her feel seen. "You made it," he said softly. "I wasn't sure you would." Evelyn shrugged, attempting casualness she didn't feel. "I needed a break," she admitted, "and it's been a while since I saw you." They wandered through the studio, talking about the colors on the walls, the techniques used, and the small triumphs and failures of Lucas's latest projects. Yet beneath the conversation, an electric tension hummed, unspoken but palpable. Every brushstroke he demonstrated, every laugh he drew from her, carried the subtle weight of what they had left unsaid. Evelyn found herself stealing glances at him, noting the way his jaw tensed when he spoke about abstract ideas, the way his hands moved with a quiet grace, the way his presence filled the room like a pulse she couldn't ignore. T1 point. Lucas moved closer to show her a technique for blending paint, and Evelyn felt her heart leap in her chest. The proximity, the brush of his fingers against hers, was a spark she hadn't anticipated. She pulled back slightly, reminding herself that this was a boundary she had agreed to respect, yet a part of her lingered too close, reluctant to retreat. "Evelyn," Lucas murmured, his voice lower now, intimate in a way that made her pulse quicken. "I've tried to stay back. I've tried to be just your friend, but I can't anymore. I need to be honest with you about what I feel." She looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of coercion, but found only sincerity and longing. Her mind screamed for reason, for loyalty to Nathan, but her body responded in ways she didn't fully understand. She was acutely aware of the line she was approaching, and yet the line shimmered, inviting her to step over it. Evelyn's thoughts turned to Nathan, to the quiet evenings they shared, to the moments of stability and kindness he offered. She loved him, she truly did, but Lucas had ignited something different, a dangerous, exhilarating mix of desire, emotional intimacy, and unspoken possibilities. She realized that the excitement she felt with Lucas wasn't about replacing Nathan. It was about experiencing a connection she had never allowed herself to feel so intensely. Lucas closed the gap between them slowly, as if testing her boundaries without forcing them, and she found herself unable to step back. He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. The warmth of his touch spread through her like fire, making every rational thought fade, just enough for desire to creep in. Her pulse quickened, and she felt a mixture of guilt and thrill twisting in her stomach. "I don't want to hurt him," she whispered, barely audible, as though saying it out loud would make the betrayal more real. "I know," Lucas replied gently, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. I'm not asking you to. I want this moment. Just one night, Evelyn. Just to feel what we've always had beneath the surface. Her breath caught, and she felt the weight of every choice pressing down on her. For years, Lucas had been her confidant, the person who knew her fears, her dreams, her secrets. The thought of crossing that line was terrifying, yet at the same time, it was almost impossible to resist. She realized that she was standing at the edge of a precipice, one step away from changing everything. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath, trying to anchor herself in reason. But when she opened them, Lucas was still looking at her with that mixture of longing and patience that made her question every boundary she had set. The world outside the studio seemed to shrink until it was just the two of them, suspended in a moment where desire, guilt, and emotional intimacy collided. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling but steady. Lucas, I can't promise anything beyond this night. I don't want to ruin everything, but I can't stop thinking about it either. His expression softened, a mixture of relief and unspoken triumph. That's all I need, he said quietly. One night, nothing more. Just tonight. Evelyn nodded, and a strange mixture of fear and anticipation settled over her. She knew that this night would change everything, that the choice she was about to make would ripple far beyond the confines of the studio. Yet in that moment, the tension, the longing, and the unspoken understanding between them created a fragile bubble of possibility, a moment suspended between loyalty and desire, between reason and impulse. As they stood together, hands still entwined, Evelyn felt the first tremors of a storm that would test every part of her heart, mind, and soul. The night had begun, and there was no turning back, only the unfolding of consequences she could no longer avoid. The night air outside Lucas's studio was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain from earlier in the evening. Inside, the soft glow of the lamps cast shadows that seemed to stretch and bend around Evelyn and Lucas, enclosing them in a space that felt separate from the rest of the world. She felt her heartbeat thudding in her chest, a relentless drum that mirrored the tension between them. Every rational thought, every image of Nathan's calm face, every memory of his quiet loyalty, struggled to compete with the immediacy of the moment, with the electric closeness that Lucas radiated. Lucas let go of her hand only briefly to pour 2 glasses of sparkling water, the gesture casual, almost domestic, but Evelyn noticed the careful attention in his movements. He returned to her side and handed her a glass, their fingers brushing in a spark of contact that made her breath hitch. There was something intimate in these small acts, an unspoken understanding that words alone could not carry. She took a sip, trying to steady herself, but the warmth of his gaze made her hands tremble despite the cool water. They sat down on a worn leather couch that smelled faintly of cedar, the city lights casting a muted glow across the room. Lucas turned slightly, so their knees brushed, and Evelyn felt a jolt of awareness shoot through her. She reminded herself this was a line she had agreed to approach but not cross. Yet the line had become blurred in ways she hadn't anticipated. Every smile, every glance, every subtle touch became loaded with possibility. Evelyn, Lucas said quietly, almost reverently, I don't want this to be just about desire. I want it to mean something, at least to us. His voice carried an earnestness that both comforted and unsettled her. She had always known him to be honest, but now that honesty was wrapped in temptation, and she wasn't sure she had the strength to resist, her thoughts drifted uncomfortably to Nathan. She remembered the steady warmth of his hand in hers during last weekend's walk, the gentle way he had kissed her forehead when she fell asleep on the couch, the unwavering patience he had always shown. She loved him, she truly did, but she also recognized that her connection with Lucas was something entirely different, a storm of emotion that defied rules and expectations. Lucas reached for her hand again, and this time she didn't pull away. The warmth of his touch spread through her like wildfire, igniting feelings she hadn't allowed herself to explore. She could feel the weight of the choice pressing down on her, the knowledge that with every passing moment, The line between friendship and betrayal was becoming thinner. Yet there was a part of her, a reckless, impulsive part, that wanted to see where this path might lead, even if it meant risking everything she had built. "I've thought about this for so long," Lucas murmured, his thumb tracing gentle circles over the back of her hand. "I've imagined what it would be like to tell you how I feel, to be close to you in ways we've only ever hinted at. And now, you're here, and it feels like everything else doesn't exist." Evelyn swallowed hard, the knot in her stomach tightening. She could feel the pull of his sincerity, the intensity of the years of friendship, and the raw vulnerability he rarely showed. It made her want to believe in the moment, to let herself be swept away, even as guilt and fear warred within her. She thought of Nathan again, of the promises they had made, of the simple, steady life she had envisioned. But she also recognized that the life she imagined wasn't equipped to contain the surge of emotions Lucas provoked. The tension between them grew, unspoken but undeniable, until it seemed to thrum in the air like an electric current. Evelyn's mind raced with questions of morality, loyalty, and desire. Yet with every heartbeat, the temptation felt more urgent, more impossible to deny. Lucas leaned closer, and she felt the warmth of his breath, the steady rhythm of his chest, the familiarity of his presence becoming something more than she had anticipated. "I know it's wrong," she whispered, barely audible, "but I can't stop thinking about you." The words shocked her as much as they did him, a quiet confession that exposed the turmoil within her. Lucas's expression softened, relief flickering in his eyes, and he cupped her face gently, a tender gesture that made her knees weaken. "You're not alone in this," he said softly. "I've felt the same way for years. I didn't want to pressure you, but now that it's here, I want it to be real just for tonight. That's all I'm asking." Evelyn closed her eyes, trying to steady the whirlwind inside her. She knew that one night could change everything, that crossing this boundary could shatter trust, friendships, and her sense of self. And yet, the longing in her chest, the ache for the intimacy and understanding Lucas offered, was undeniable. She opened her eyes and met his gaze, the depth of emotion there rendering her momentarily speechless. They moved closer, the space between them charged with anticipation. Every brush of their arms, every shared breath, heightened the intensity of the moment. Evelyn felt the mixture of fear and exhilaration, guilt and desire, intertwining until it was impossible to separate one from the other. She realized that this night, however fleeting, would leave an imprint on both of them, a memory that could not be erased. Yes, they settled together on the couch, hands entwined. Evelyn felt the storm of emotions surge through her. There was fear, yes, but also a thrilling sense of freedom, a dangerous liberation that made her pulse race. Lucas's voice, soft and steady, whispered reassurances that only deepened the connection between them in that fragile, suspended moment. Evelyn understood that there was no turning back. The decision had been made the instant she allowed herself to remain, to acknowledge the feelings she had long suppressed. The night stretched ahead of them, filled with possibilities and consequences she could not yet foresee. And though the world outside continued in its ordinary rhythm, inside that small studio, everything had shifted irrevocably. Evelyn took a deep breath, resting her forehead against Lucas's shoulder, and let herself exist in the tension, the longing, and the inevitability of what was to come. The first step had been taken, and with it, a chain of events had begun, one that would challenge every part of her heart and force her to confront truths she could no longer ignore.